Boop, doop, boop, boo, doo, 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 doo. Here we are, and we're live. And welcome aboard your dreamy dreamland with Sensei Al Bob YouTube channel. And I am your Sensei Al Bob. I am your griot. I'm here to tell you a story and to engage you with that story into a conversation. So, what's today's or this show's title? What are we going to do? And the answer is stop whining, right? And autoplay, steg anomaly. Steg, uh, not having teeth makes me not be able to get my mouth around certain words. But there's a word, there's a word for breaking codes, right? that and the key to breaking a code is finding the key, right? That's basically it, right? And most mystery books are written with a key, right? And that's why the day I met the old crone, I was in the Stasis Library in Trinity University in Dublin, and that's the stuff they had from the Library of Alexandria, right? And the interesting thing about the Library of Alexandria, it's like your county library. It wasn't just one of them. Because Alexander, in a matter of short years, conquered the known world, everything from England to Egypt and into Africa and, right on the doorstep of India, and then he died. But his what he did, so he went to school, Socrates, Plato were his teachers, he taught, he was from that school, not where they had a textbook and you're taking an exam, but where you have a mentor who, molds you, right? And his father, his relationship with his father and mother. So that's kind of what put the bee in the bonnet of that boy. So once he became king at a young age, he said, well, I'm going to show my dad. And he conquered the known world, right? And one of, he was, like, again, really well schooled, I only studied Socrates and Plato and the other Greeks and the other Romans and Egyptians and all the philosophers and great men of thought and women of thought too, because you look at mythology, there weren't just men gods, there were women too, and they were just as important, if not more powerful. Yes, there was Zeus, but all the rest of the girls ran the show, and so did a lot of the Greek cities. Sparta being the number one girl-run thing. The guys went off to war with their boyfriends, the little kids they had as their aides, aide de camps, and the girls were fine with that, buggering the boys. But if they did not win the war, when the guys came back, the women had their backs to them, and they weren't getting anything that night or anytime soon. And if they won the war, they got the roses and the kisses and everything else. But the women ran everything, and women still do run everything. We just, guys are such pudding heads, they don't realize that. Now, my mom, she was a triple Capricorn. She ran the Navy, right? And my dad was just a captain of the boat, She was the person who ran the show, right? And pretty much when you look at most things, and guys are so stupid to not realize that, women, are like 50% of the personality. Public, there's guys and girls and women and anyway. And they don't realize that it's much better to be with a woman than not to. And the other thing is, why even fight with a woman? Because most of the time they're right. Women are like eternal Virgos. They're right most of the time. And if you listen to them, when they're not right all the time, you can listen to them and say, honey, what about this? You know, instead of we're doing it my way. That was basically my dad's motif. But, he didn't realize that my mom was playing him all the friggin' time to get exactly what she wanted. Right. So, um, when you look at his story, it's so egocentric that it's not hidden anywhere. But the mystery schools are feminine in gender, in the way that they hide things in plain sight. Instead, for anyway, it is the way of writing a code in plain sight, meaning you don't you don't hide it in a code. You basically put it right there in plain sight. And unless you are part of the crew that knows what you're talking about, people it just goes right over their head, or they don't care. So that's where we are right now. We're everything is right in front of us, and the hidden hand. In a lot of ways, if you ever saw that movie Vice about Dick Cheney, basically saw that he was the average drunk guy, and he had a woman, Lynn Cheney, pulling his string the whole time. She was like doing this, right? There's this great scene where he could probably run for president, but instead of that, he lets George W. run for president. He goes, George's father says, you should get Dick Cheney to find you a vice president, right? He's number one Republican. He's got all this what they called cachet or power, and so W goes, hey, help me find a vice president, and so Cheney pretends to interview, and then he finally comes to W and say, listen, I will be your vice president and I will run the administration. You don't have to do anything. You can sit in the office with your cowboy boots and just, take the photo ops, go on the trips. I will do all the heavy lifting. I will do everything, right? And I'll take care of business and you just have a good time and be president, right? So Debbie goes, yeah, wow, that's great. I mean, it's just like what happened when he was in prep school and just like when he was in Yale and all of the above, right? So just like when he got out of going to Vietnam by being in the National Guard and being a jet, he flew jets. So wow, that's fun. And then when his little crew was about to be called up, he went AOL when it wasn't fun anymore. He went over the wall. Did he get in trouble? No. He just kind of went and became drunk and did a lot of cocaine. And pretty much every president has done that. I mean, I would love to see, what Carrot Head Pinhead's blood looks like, and everyone in this cabinet, I wonder what drugs the Mike Whiteboy is taking. That guy is so white, and what it looks like to me, what it looks like, the powers that shouldn't be, and the hidden hand has in store for us. I mean, we haven't had, please, do we vote for who? No, we are given the character who's going to play the president. And it couldn't be any more right in front of your face. With started off with a good old, Ronald Reagan. He was an actor. He worked, for GE and GE Playhouse. In the 17 Mule Borax show, and and all of he slowly, and he went from just playing Bonzo and cowboys to being a politician by doing these being the authoritative voice in the opening of these shows, and he would give a little little blah blah blah, and then he became a politician and he ran for things and then became governor, right? And his practice for being president was being president of the Stage Actors Guild, right? So, and the same with Donnie. He was on a TV show for 8 or 10 years called The Apprentice. And what is he apprenticing to be? He was the apprentice. He was apprenticing to be president. You're fired. I mean, just that's what he's done in his administration. He's gone through more people than you can even count, and nobody's any better. Is Bernie any better? No, because Bernie should have been president because he won the Democratic nomination last time in 16, but the DNC screwed him and put in Hillary because the powers that be that run both the DNC and the Republican Party wanted the carrot head in. And the only person the carrot head could run against and win was Hillary because she was the most hated entity, the box of deplorables and, Anyway, I mean, she said stuff that makes Bloomberg look like Mother Teresa. So all of the you got to realize that anything you see on media is scripted, and that's why I do what I do. This is a stream of consciousness. There's no script in this. And when people chat, which is when the show is at its best, it's when you guys take part, when you jump in. Like this morning, Lo, she was really great. She was letting her gut talk. And that's what I want the cadre to do, not to think about any prescribed, scripted book, or scholastic box, you know. um, Earlier show this morning, I called, hate is a prison cell and love is what busts us out, right? Love's co-creation is what busts us out. Well, we live in a prison planet, That's really where we are right now. When we subscribe to the attitude that we live in a world of scarcity, that you have to buy things, that, we have to consume. The only way to make profit, to make money, to have a sensibility of control and safety about your life, you have to consume, consume, consume. So we, dig up raw materials and we cause wars to get these materials, in third world countries in South America, in Africa, and in the Mid East, and all around, in Europe too. That's what Europe was all about. The acquisition, the consumption. And until we realize we don't have to do that, that we live. I mean, that's what I'm doing. Why am I a homeless guy? Why am I living on basically $70 a week? Could you do that? You know, could you live on $70 a week? That's roughly. In some months, I live on that, right? $70. And what I'm doing is living by example. Saying, I mean, I was, when I worked for the corporate world and the desperate lawyers, I had a very nice salary. Then worked between 11 and 20 weeks a year, and I could have a seven-figure salary if I wanted to work really hard, like those poor kids who work 60 hours a week. No, now I'm ready to go back, and but I want a little higher position because what is needed is a rebranding of not just helping the desperate lawyers, but a rebranding of the aesthetic, right? And we need to have an alternative aesthetic. And it doesn't mean that the powers that shouldn't be in the hidden hand can't be, the ruling class, but that they rule in a way that is, sustainable. And what it really does, instead of consuming the human soul, it manifests an ability to ascend it, right? We go on about how we evolved. Well, the main thing that we have to evolve is our consciousness, our self awareness, and our soul. All the rest, not so much, because in the real dynamic of the soul, we've been here 6 billion years, right? Pretty much. And it doesn't matter what bag of water we're wearing, whether we look like a reptile or this cushy mammal, it's all what it is, right? So Come on, guys, jump in here. Um, Join the conversation because that's what I really want to hear from you guys is a conversation. Because without the conversation, I'm just talking to myself, right? Yes, and I say, don't believe a word I say. Check it out yourself, right? This is a adult conversation, but it's for uh, the hope of the existence of our children and their children, right? So you, as the adult, should take this in cognitively. Think about it with your gut and not the squirrel in your head, and expand your consciousness to being awake, and then live by an example of a loving, awoken, that's woke. I'm awoke, I'm woke, you know, Warren's little, she is so. All of these guys are exactly what they seem like. She's, she's got it right, and she's all about war, right? And so she's like sanded her voice. I heard her on one of the talks. And that's who she is. She's so tied up on the inside. That's all she can get out. You know, and Chloe Wobbersher, or whatever her name is, her eyes, and she doesn't have cross eyes, but she is so, you can't tell what she's saying, or what she's going to do. My record is, well, you look at her record, she was, a prosecuting attorney. She was just like, the other one who was leading in the poll, and the polls don't mean nothing. And Bernie is the closest thing to a real candidate. He is what he is, right? And he is what he is, and he has been, since he was mayor of a town. He's still acting like the mayor of a town in Vermont. He is what they're called a nebbish or a minch. And he wants to do the right thing. He tries to do the right thing. He's working towards doing the right thing, but please. And like I said, so he should be president right now, right? And this is one of those. Was one of those moments where if he had gotten to be president, the world would have been going in a different direction. Just like if Jack Kennedy didn't get whacked, and then Bobby got whacked, and then Junior got whacked, because the powers that shouldn't be, the guys who are Majestic 12, the guys who wrote the National Security Act of 1947 and basically brought the Nazis into our government and turned us into a Fourth Reich, because the Nazis were already on the moon. We're already on Mars. We're already had technology 1,000 years ahead of the atomic bomb. The stuff the Nazis had compared to, there was a physicist who was, took the rat line through the Vatican and made it to Argentina. And Mr. Perez made him his head scientist. And this guy was, had, gravomagnetic propulsion and 0 point energy and dimensional weapons, right? That made atomic bombs and even hydrogen bombs look like firecrackers, like to, wipe out a planet, right? And because they're already off the planet, right? So they had unlimited power and they had technology way ahead. When Admiral Byrd in 1948, or whenever he went up to the Antarctic to, because they knew the Nazis they found the underground bases there from the makers, and that's one place where they stumbled on some real sophisticated technology. Um, we sent an aircraft carrier group, real attack aircraft. I mean, we had some. This was just after World War II, so we still had good equipment, and we had some really sharp soldiers. He brought about 4,000 Marines with him, and enough to attack any country. Right. Well, he went up there, saying that they were going to test, Arctic equipment and techniques. Anyway, they were supposed to be up there 6, 8 months, maybe a year. They lasted like less than 2 months. And they limped home, and no one saw, everyone saw them go with an aircraft carrier and a bunch of destroyers and submarines and maybe even a large, boat. And no one saw who came back. No one got the count on who came back. And when Byrd landed in South America, he was freaked out and he said, "We're against people we don't even know, and they got stuff that makes us, they just chased us out of there, right?" And he was quiet for the rest of his life, and then he died. And so those were the guys who were let into our country in Operation Paperclip. And we didn't get like 700 of these scientists. No, we got 70,000, not just scientists, but our whole CIA was the Nazis. Because Doran said, "Listen, I have all these operatives in Russia. We fight in Russia, so they're going to be your next enemy. So, you know, I'll just give you our intelligence operatives, right?" And of course, those people said, "Oh, Russia's, oh, come, we're going to get you." And Russia, come on, it lost 60 million people in World War II. All their major cities and manufacturing sites were destroyed. I mean, if we weren't giving them stuff, they wouldn't have been able to fight the war. Yes, they moved a number of their factories on the other side of the Ural Mountains, but still, the Germans ate their lunch. The only thing that depleted the Russians had 60 million people to throw at the Germans, and the Germans only had 300,000 or a million and a half. So just by attrition, you know, they just had the people. But in the very beginning, they had Russia against the wall. And then they started bombing the Russians with nuclear weapons. The bombs that we dropped on Hiroshima, that was, came to us in a submarine and it had swastikas on it. We spray painted it gray and dropped it out of the Enola Gay. And the best person to pick up on any of this is Joseph P. Farrell, right? Read his books, the Brotherhood of the Bell and all of that stuff. He's got, he's quite prolific, he really knocked it out of the park with describing how those people and the airspace people and LBJ and the super corrupt political structure of America killed Kennedy because Kennedy, his daddy was you know, a crook, a gangster, and made a fortune first in booze, and then a fortune in the stock market. And each time he knew best to make hay at those things and then leave it, cut his losses, and go to the next thing. And he jumped out of the stock market just before he collapsed, and he did a lot to make it collapse, right? So his father, Joe, was super scumbag, but his mother was trying to, it was like the angel and the devil, and their kids were somewhere in between. And so Joseph, who died, who was murdered, Joe Kennedy, he volunteered to, take a B-24 packed with bombs and radio control, take it off and jump out, over the Atlantic just after to get out in the sea to, make sure then the airplane would be taken over by remote control and they, like a cruise missile, right? Well, he got on the airplane, took it off, got up there, hit the switch for the remote control to take off, and boom. And Joe went away. He was multiplied. So Jack was the next, but Jack was a playboy. The PT 109. He was going across. These islands had all kinds. Had Japs over here and Marines over here and bases here and there. And he took his PT boat was his own private little speedboat, and he was heading for where the nurses were to get laid, and he was going, with his lights off, and the Japanese destroyer had its lights off, and it ran right over him, right? Yes, he saved all his guys, broke his back, and, got sent home, and, he was still in the Navy, and they, jacked him up a little bit. And so he became Forrestal's, the guy who is head of the, he was the first Secretary of Defense. He was the first guy who was on MJ-12, when they took, because stuff that came down in New Mexico, weren't the first. They found stuff in 31. They found a lot of stuff before then too. So they knew about ET and about what was, who were these people, and they realized that they were ETs, dimensionals, and other players, foreign sources. They called it foreign technology, right? And so at the end of the war, Forrestal went to Europe. I mean, and it was like days after Germany surrendered. Forrestal and Kennedy, as his assistant, go to Germany and get the deals for a paperclip, right? And also are making the deals at Tehran and Potsdam about how to slice up the world between England, Russia, and the United States, right? And basically, Russia and the United States and England said, okay, this is how we're going to do it. Russia, you're going to be the bad boy. America is going to be the savior. England's going to be the banker between the two, right? And Russia, chose Stalin. The only way you're going to succeed is play this game. You can be the boss. You can rule. You can do whatever you want with your own people, and you can have all of Eastern Europe. We don't want it. It's they're like s-hole people. We don't care about them. So you take them, make them your slaves. All well and good. And we'll play this game out for 40 years, right? Then that'll end, and then we'll have the terrorists, and then we'll have the failed states, and then we'll have the aliens, right? And that's what Werner von Braun said, early on. So anyway, the hydrogen bomb, Teller, who was Dr. Strangelove, go see that movie, Dr. Strangelove. That's Teller. And so he, said, hey, we can have this. It was like the big atomic bomb, right? And all it was an atomic bomb with a, once they started fooling around with that stuff, they were creating isotopes, right? There's a whole bunch of isotopes that nature never manufactured. We did, right? And they're really toxic and really dangerous, like plutonium, right? And named after the god of the underworld. And so there's lithium isotopes that you put them in a certain state, and then you detonate a hydrogen bomb. And what happens is the energy goes out and hits this place where there are dimensional fences, and it pushes the hydrogen together, and you get a hydrogen bomb, right? So, boom. But the real energy isn't coming from the atomic bomb or even the fusion of the hydrogen atoms. No, it's that it's letting open a door in these dimensions of 0 point energy, because between the different dimensions, there are what is known as the ether, and that's unlimited power. And that's what 0 point energy is all about. It's about how to safely tap that open little thing, and you get unlimited power. So in alternating current, polyphase alternating current generators, when you have these coils zipping around a magnetic field, they are at the end of the armatures, there are what are known as torsion fields. And those are scalar in dimension, not Hertzian, scalar, 16 dimensions. So within that, you have the 0 point energy. And so when they first built the first gigantic alternating current generator in the Niagara plant, which made alternating, DC was king all during Edison's little reign. And then once Westinghouse and Tesla did the power plant in Niagara Falls and sent the current to Chicago and New York, that was it, because DC could only be transmitted 6 miles. So being able to transmit alternating current economically like that, that's, all the, Mr. Rothschild. That's why Mr. Rothschild owns all the utility companies. And that's why our utility companies are falling apart. He's squeezing every nickel out. And that's why we had the Price-Anderson Act to have nuclear power, because nuclear power is like cutting butter with a chainsaw, right? So anyway, Kennedy realized all of the above, right? And so when we tested our first hydrogen bomb, right, out there in the outdoors, and we, because of the Spanish-American War, and World War II, we conquered more real estate. We have like Puerto Rico and the Philippines, but we let them become a separate country in the Jimmy Carter days, and half of Central America, South America, all these islands out in the Pacific. We passed a law in our Congress saying anything that had, bird poop on it, we own. So there's thousands of islands out there in the Pacific that just because it had bird poop on it, we owned it because nobody else wanted it, but we knew that that was valuable for making ammunition and nitrates and fertilizer, right? So we had all these bases out there, right? We still do, over 1,000 bases, where we got B-52s and B-2 bombers and you name it, we got it. But that's nothing, right? Kumar Pushma, Ku, A, KP, K or P. Today is a very good day, my friend. Yep, it is, Kumar. So, Mr. Dr. Strangelove said, okay, I can make a hydrogen bomb, so let's test them. So the Cold War is going. Oh, the Russians have the atomic bomb. We got to have the hydrogen bomb. So, and every time we would make one of these, we would give the Russians the technology about it, right? I mean, they made an atomic bomb 2 or 3 years after the end of World War II. After their whole, it takes a big industrial complex to make an atomic bomb. So, anyway, so we made the hydrogen bomb, right? And so when we we budgeted enough money to have 3 tests. Mike, Shrimp, and I forget the other name. And so when we detonated the first hydrogen bomb, it was 1,000 times more powerful than what we estimated it to be. We thought it would be like 500 times bigger than the atomic bomb on Hiroshima, 500, right? Well, it was 1,000. So it was like 500,000 times bigger. So when it blew up, it irradiated the whole Pacific, right? Blew a gigantic hole in the troposphere, right? And we were, we nearly fried ourselves because our little blockhouses were like blown away, and so we were like freaked out about, whoa, this is like way more powerful than we thought it was ever going to be, So what did we do? Did we say, oh, we shouldn't do that again? No, we had enough money to do 2 more. And each time it was bigger. And one of them was so big that it irradiated Japan with fallout. And this is just like, 5, 6 years after we nuked them, so they were a little upset. And so, so what did we do? We decided, well, we better not blow these things up on the ground because it threw so much crap up in the air that it was irradiating even Americans to the point that the cancer rate was going up within 2 years of that experiment. Anyway, and they still had no idea why it was doing that. And they were still going to build more of them. So they built more of them, and they blew them up in Australia, but they put them on Nike Zeus missiles and sent them up into space. Now, they didn't even realize that there was this thing called the Van Allen belt, or that there was a thing up there called ozone protecting us from the ultraviolet radiation of the sun. But so we sent missiles straight up to that place, and boom! And that's when we fried we were just starting to have transistors and things and stuff in Asia was, our Navy ships and things in Hawaii. That's when we discovered what an EMP was, right? I mean, we are like monkeys with firecrackers, right? So what did we do? We sent, in the down low, some of our physicists to Argentina to talk to this German scientist who was already he went beyond. He made a fusion reactor in the 30s, and that we haven't, the having a toral thing, blah blah blah. No, and so and he manufactured lasers way before we did. That's how they got more U-235 and 8 for nuclear bombs, because instead of doing it chemically, they were hitting it with laser beams, and it was much more efficient. And And so when we only had, grams of weapons grade uranium, they had kilograms, hundreds of them, right? And that was one of the trades we made. A German submarine went into America with nuclear weapons already made, and a few hundred kilograms of um, weapons grade, nuclear material and triggers. See, that was the biggest problem we were having. We were trying to figure out how to cause. Now, the plutonium bomb was pretty much, caveman technology. You had a softball size of plutonium. You put explosives around it in a way that they all went off at the same time and pushed the plutonium together, and boom, boom, right? That was pretty much. But having a uranium bomb, it was like shooting a gun, and you had to have a bunch of things happen. You had to have a neutron source over here already emitting, but you couldn't have it emitting all the time because it would cause the material to go fission, right? So it couldn't start emitting until it fell out of the bomb, and it had to be doing it at a certain rate and pick it up to cause the weapons grade material to get more energized to the point it would. But if you tried to do it like that, it would fizzle out. It had to be brought up to this place and then bang, right? It would do it on itself. And so we couldn't do that. But the Germans did. And so in the submarine, they sent a German scientist, three ME-262s. They're a really good jet fighter, and like I said, 1,000 kilograms of weapons grade uranium and a bunch of triggers, to set up bombs, right? So, and two bombs, like I said, that had swastikas on them. We just painted them gray and dropped them on Hiroshima. So, this is reality. You can, like I said, go read Joseph P. Farrell, and you will come across all of this. Now, all of this means nothing. Don't believe a word I say. What is more important is what Kumar said. Today is a very good day, my friend. Right? So, Kumar, I would love it if you were to expand on that and tell us where you're from and what your gut is telling you. Luna, earlier this morning, really came out and gave us a lot of interesting things to think about. And Kumar, have you been watching the show, the Dreamy Dreamland here? Have you subscribed? And what do you think of what's going on? Let's see. Hitler escaped to the center of Earth. Yes, right? I would agree. All of those motifs. Now, but Kumar, you have to realize when you say the center of Earth, that's more metaphorical motif. Now, there's a lot of stuff underground, and there's a lot of stuff deeply underground. But when you and there are places all around the Earth, like Antarctica, where things are deeply underground, and it's like a little world down there, meaning there's hot springs and light sources and things growing and forests and, and I'm talking a big space, right? So that's why you have to be really particular about the words you use. Um, now, if you were to say Hitler escaped to deep into the earth, yes. Center, meaning, there where the core is, man, again, I've never went there. They could have, a Hilton hotel down there in the center of the earth. Who knows? I don't, but I do know, because I have seen with these eyeballs underground facilities, right? I worked on one in up near Ithaca, where the Finger Lakes are, right? And I worked on a Cargill salt mine, right? And it had been there for 60, 70 years, right? And my boss, we were bringing a great deal of electricity into this mine that had been there for a long time. So I did, what I do well, and I do, I can run crews really well, didn't wire anything, and I'm very good myself at terminating things, exotic technologies, and I'm very good with high voltage electricity, so transformers. So we were bringing in like the grid into this salt mine, which really didn't need that kind of electricity. And we had put together, a distribution transformer farm on top, and there were things down in the hole, 900 feet underground, that had to be tuned, and that was like my little specialty, tuning transformers. And so my boss said, I want you to go down. I said, I told you my little experience in uranium mining. I don't want to go underground. And he said, well, you're the only guy who can do it, so you got to go. And I said, well, nope, not going to do it. And he goes, so what's it going to take for you? I said, a lot of money, cash, right? And I'm only going to go down there and do that. I'm not going to do it for days and days and days. I'm going to go down there, take care of it. He tried to weaponize Chud after he hot there. Kumar, you have to be, again, I got you where he said he tried to weaponize, and then Chud, no idea what that is, after he hut there. Okay, whatever that means. Okay. I would agree with that. Organically modified human beings. Yep. Transhumanism is taking that one step further because it's adding technology. It's putting nanodust, which we're breathing. And basically. So Kumar, did you ever see the movie Zardos, made in the 70s? And the guy who played James Bond, 007, the first one, Connery. That's a very interesting film. I'd love it, Kumar, if you could cannibalistic humanoid underdwellers. Yep. So I can tell that you like movies, because that's exactly the movie of the time traveler, right? H.G. Wells, and he goes on a pizza and finds all the sheep up there just going, oh, it's life, it's so beautiful, let's fuck, let's play games, let's swim. I'm not worrying about anything. The food is always there. It's always beautiful. And then the horn blows and I go underground and so. And basically anything that is in the context of what people believe actually is, right? If you believe it, it is, right? So, but that doesn't mean that is what needs to be, right? And it does not mean, because everything that we're experiencing here is an illusion. So since it's all an illusion, basically everything is up for grabs. It's all happening. If you believe that, it's going on like that. So all those folks who were like, MAGA me, and I went last night and kind of looked at everybody's, all the different points of references, the left, the right, to this, to that. And, the people who really support Bernie and the people who really support Donald Trump. And the powers that shouldn't be, and the hidden hand wants to have a civil war revolution. And the best way is to have Bernie's wackos go after Carrot Head's wackos, right? And we're stuck in the middle, right? And in the process of that, buddy, Kumar, that's when you're going to get cannibalistic humanoid underdwellers. We have all lived many lives. No kidding, Reincarnation really is the only thing that makes sense, because if, there is a God, which I do believe in, I'm not a big subscriber to anybody's book or, God. Now, I've read them all. I've studied them all. I went to school. I was meant to be a Catholic priest. I went through that process, and I wouldn't submit. And so instead of them killing me, they, because luckily I had a cardinal as my godfather, I just was asked to leave. And conversely, years later, I was living in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and I again had a godfather who was the big time Hasidic rabbi who had a Lubavitcher, school for rabbis. and he would come. He was my landlord. He would come up when he picked my, and he would come and get my rent. Not, I just didn't give it to the super. My rabbi would come with this really great schnapps, and some really good Jewish food. Really nice potato pancakes and other delicacies of the Hasidim. And we would have a nice little meal. Nice. And he had brought 2 bottles of wine and some schnapps. We'd start out with a little schnapps, and then we'd have, um, a dry wine with dinner, and then a sweet wine with the pastries he would bring, and then he would have cigars, and we would smoke cigars and drink the schnapps and talk about theology. And so after about the third year of this, he goes, "You need to come to you need to be a rabbi." And I said, "Rabbi, I can't, I'm Roman Catholic, I'm Italian, Irish, German. I'm white, come on, you know, I went to school to be I have a godfather who's a cardinal." He goes, "I know him. He's a good friend of mine. And anyway, no one's perfect. And so, you know, so I subscribe and understand virtually every religion, right? And I'm a big fan of the Vedas. I'm a big fan of the Buddhist text. I'm a big fan of everybody, and pretty much even Jesus subscribed to reincarnation, because he said, "Hey, without reincarnation, what you have is a feckless God. With reincarnation, it doesn't matter. You're here to learn something, and whatever happens, it's like whatever happens in Vegas stays. So whatever happens in this bag of water stays there. And the best thing you can do is move yourself into an ascensive, moving forward kind of position." Uh, let's see. We all live many times. Yep. And Anthony says, "Are we living in a virtual reality or holographic universe?" Well, kind of, but it's not that simple. It's not built to like any technology. When you say virtual reality or holographic, and a lot of people got the goggles on. That movie, Steven Spielberg's films are all about, manufacturing consent. And so that movie he made about Player One is all about it. Everyone's living with their goggles on, right? And some people actually have the physical goggles on. Other people have the metaphor of the goggles, like, Christians have the goggles on. Anybody who believes in whatever their belief structure to the point that they're going to do violence to somebody else who disagrees with them. Well, they got the goggles on, right? Yesterday, you say you cook. Please show making food. Well, you can go back to my other channels, uh, especially when I live with John Boy. I would do a lot of cooking shows. But basically, Kumar, my basic cooking. Now, I've been schooled in many schools. French cooking, my grandma's Italian cooking. I've had a lot of restaurants. I have a lot of different restaurants cooking. But for me, as a homeless guy, when I'm at somebody's place, A, I can't make a mess. B, I can't put a big stress on, so I'm a one pot cooking kind of guy. And I don't have that, I spend about $42 on food for the month, right? That's it. That I buy, that I cook, $42. Because my food stamps have been cut from about $112 when I first got them down to about $80, and now they're down to about 40 something bucks, right? And and I only buy vegetables, dairy, and protein. I don't buy any processed food whatsoever. Whereas most of the people on welfare just get macaroni and cheese because it's filling and cheap, and then they become obese. There are people around here who are, because I live in a very poverty-stricken area. The you know the mountains of the, I keep wanting to say Adirondacks, but that's upstate New York. But there's the Blue Ridge Mountains and the other ones, and I live right between them. And Ozarks is one. But anyway, those folks, that's all the people in Mohammed's around here, they're all dying. They're all obese. They all have blood pressure. They all have cancer. They all are starving to death because the only thing is eating crap, Twinkies and drinking Yoo-hoo, not Yoo-hoo, it'd be good if they drank Yoo-hoo, but, Dr. Pepper and chewing tobacco. So all the people lose their teeth by the time they're 25, right? Because they're chewing tobacco from 6. And when you dip, when you put the powdered tobacco under your lip, it causes you to lose all your teeth. They all rot out. You get gum and jaw cancer, and then it goes into their brain, and then they're dead by the time they're 40. And that's a good portion of the population. Other population have worked in mines and factories where they don't care about the people, so they get silly in their lungs. Black lung is really silly. It's the crystals. Um, the coal looks disgusting. You look like mammy, but the thing that really tears you up, like gives you black lung, is the silicate, the crystal that's in the all around the coal formation. So there are a lot of coal mines, not so much now, but there were tons of coal mines in the Appalachians. And because I live right on the edge of Virginia, West Virginia, Tennessee, North Carolina, and little portions of around me had little coal mines, right? And further up had oil wells, and they frack up there now. And so the people here really, and about 20 miles from me, there's an area that used to be the Garden of Eden. That was like the vegetable capital of the world. And, people like Birdseye had freezing plants there in the 50s and 60s, and people had good jobs. They got 12 to 16 bucks an hour in the 50s and 60s. And in the 70s, it got, all that food got grown because they had better freezing techniques and better transportation. It was all done in other countries, right? Because it was cheaper. And they could take advantage of it. And so they went from growing this being a fertile, unbelievable place to grow food to where they just grew tobacco, soybeans, corn, feed corn, not human corn, feed corn, and soybean and Christmas trees. And all of them were genetically modified because people weren't really eating them. They were being used for feed or manufacturing. And they sprayed all the time. And they sprayed Roundup. They even had, and they had airplanes spraying Roundup. And there's a place in a valley where they built a, you know, grammar school and, middle school right in the middle of a gigantic cornfield. And every season, they spray with airplanes, and the spray goes right over. The guy doesn't stop spraying because it's only a tenth of a mile of what the school is, and the corn is all around. And those kids, and their well for their drinking is right there. So they're drinking the Roundup, and they are being sprayed by it, and the level of cancer and autism and learning difficulties is like up the chart. So they lost the really good jobs. They have no place to work. They're being toxed out, and there's a chemical plant nearby that makes this really nasty stuff that makes resins to make plastic bags and plastic thread to weave into clothes, right? And the emissions from that, you're not supposed to let go into the environment, but they let it go anyway at night. And it flows over these mountains. And luckily, I'm 20 miles away, and luckily, these mountains aren't lumpy mountains, but they're sawtooth mountains, so the stuff hits them, right? So why I picked this place is this has really good water, has really good air. Yes, I am 50 miles in any direction to the closest Walmarts, but there are general stores here and there that I can get whatever I kind of need if I need it, but I don't need anything. I've given up on needing stuff, right? So, yep, pretty much. I don't even eat chicken and beef. I just eat vegetables and fish. And since Fukushima, I'm like cutting fish out. I mean, I eat a little bit of chicken and a little. It's not like I don't eat. The really thing I do is eat all varied things, but basically vegetables. And what's very interesting is that good food has gone up in price by 40% in the last year, right? Whereas if you took all the stuff in the supermarket, the inflationary price of it is, less than 1%. But if you just looked at the food that was good for you, the vegetables, the proteins, and the grains, they're like off the roof by 40%, right? But nobody, just, I buy them. Other well-to-do people buy them, but other than that, and there's a really good um, farmers market where these people actually grow it, and they're all organic farmers. So, and they're not in the cloud. They're like 10 miles this way. They're out of harm's way, and they have little farms because that was the majority of the farms here weren't large corporate farms. They were small individual farms that would sell their vegetables to Birdseye and to the other freezing guys, and they got made a good living doing that. And then in the economic collapse of '86, their farms were taken away from them, and then a company called Mamie bought them, and that was a cutout for Bayer, which is the most nastiest chemical company that they own um, Monsanto. So it's like, and this is all the hidden hand, and the hidden. You'd think, oh, it's just in the big cities. No, the hidden hand has its hand on everything, everywhere, right? Yes, I know. I have visited Pakistan and India in the '70s, and I could go there, but the bottom line is I'm not doing any traveling until the hidden hand hires me. Then I'll do some traveling. When I'm supported to manifest the alternative aesthetic around the world, because I don't care who runs the politics, right? But it just has to be based on, and the morons around here, oh, we have to do sustainability. Well, they're talking about sustaining the hidden hand. They're not talking about sustaining the human race, and they don't do anything. They just go to conferences. I'm just tired of that. You know, that's why I live out in the woods because I'm eating bark and mushrooms and things of that nature. And Kumar, don't tell me you're a troll. You eat virgin boy eggs. Kumar, come on. I hope you're better than that. You know. Hey Jane. Yes, huh? The hidden hand scams. Yep, exactly. Come on, Kumar. So, what part of India do you live in? And what caste are you? Where were you educated, and how old are you? Do you have a family, brothers and sisters? Are you married? Do you have children? Okay, buddy. Oops. Do, 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 do. So much for Kumar. It's not even funny. I am not a fan of anyone um, getting over on any individual groups of people, you know, and the caste system, the race system, the class system. Those are all mechanisms of the hidden hand to control um, the soul of the human race, right? And I have a sense that KP, and that's what I'm going to call him, or it, KP, um, was, not working with a full deck, right? Anyway, so 1 hour and 15 seconds. So 5 of you there. So let's get back to a more, um, you know, how can, and basically, KP, when he was discussing that, was basically whining. Really don't want to hear whining. I want to hear what we can do to create the alternative aesthetic. What KP was just about to go down the road on is how to oppress, right? So that's why I, use the 3 dots on KP, right? So anyway, and we were doing so well on not having trolls. We were almost a month or two into where we weren't having any trolls, and that was nice. So hopefully we can, because really I don't care about them. I don't care to even, do anything but use the 3 dots on them, right? So I got to do. Anyway, so anybody else, before Kumar, who was saying what? Kumar, pretty much. Anthony, you were there. What's that, buddy? Are we all living in a virtual reality? Kind of, yes. Jane, hidden hand scam. Yep. So, Jane, what do you think of the hidden hand scam and us living? Did you see, Jane, and Anthony, did you see the movie Player One by Steven Spielberg? And what Spielberg did to, Stanley Kubrick's last 2 films, Eyes Wide Shut and AI, right? And Kubrick Steven Spielberg basically, especially AI, because he took over the shooting of it and the editing of it, and Spielberg was just in the room taking away the true essence of Eyes Wide Shut, because basically that's where we are all at, gang. We're at Eyes Wide Shut, right? So let's hear Kumar's. Kumar kind of. Jane says, "No, I didn't see Player One by Steven Spielberg." Well, it's all about the near future, and it's all about what's going on right now, about all these fires in the rural, semi-suburban areas, and it's going to force the public into very packed urban centers, right? And which will be very class oriented. There'll be the haves and have-nots. Not really pleasant. The haves will be living. That movie that what's his name did about the guy who did Avatar, and the next one was his movie about the near future where pretty much everyone's a cyborg and plays in a roller bowl kind of game, and the girl was high tech from another time, and there was one city left that was floating in the sky, and that's kind of what Player One was. It was the really rich people who lived in the city floating in the sky, and and everybody else had the VR glasses on, and was just walking through a virtual reality. So they didn't relate to how terrible our lives really were. Did you know that 2030, well, all be nanotechnology manipulated. Yep, pretty much. We're already there. That's what chemtrails really are about. Or, I mean, they are about a lot of stuff. It is about manipulating the weather. And it's also about all these fires are being caused by, all these mega fires are being caused by A, poor management of the forest and the land, and B, the stuff they pump in the air is aluminum and a number of other metals that basically make that stuff called stuff that really burns really fast, thermite, right? And so they spray it in nanoparticles, so it's not super concentrated, but it constantly is going down on the ground, and then the leaves fall on top of it, and then it goes on top of that. So it's making a birthday cake of some but it's not going to catch fire unless something really hot sets it off, right? So a falling power line that sets it off. A lightning bolt sets it off. Also, they have drones that fly around and pop out these little ping pong ball sizes of things called magnesium that can have timers in them, or temperature, or barometric pressure, or humidity sensitive, to just boom, burst off into super hot magnesium type of burn, which then sets off the nanoparticles in the forest, and bingo, you have these crazy fires, right? And especially in Australia, what's happening in Australia? I live there. They had fires all the time. They had bushfires all the friggin' time, but nothing like this. And so all these things are being done to push people out of the rural area where they could be self-sufficient into these cities where they're going to have to depend on the hidden hand to survive. So that's what's going on, and that's where they're going in 2030. And basically, this seeming manufactured biologic weapon in China, wants to do what the Georgia Stones, to cut the population down to about somewhere between 2 billion and 500 million people. So there'll be 100 million really rich folk and everybody else, and they'll all be slaves, and they'll all basically be living on the plantation, and won't be able to complain, won't be able to organize, won't be able to do anything except die. Well, that's kind of where we are now, because that's the only thing you can depend on. But that doesn't have to be, and that's like when people go in that mode, they're whining. What I want is people to think about a true alternative. I mean, I'm sick of people going to sustainable conferences because all they do is whine, right? And get stuck in a belief like, oh, we all have to drink our urine, or the planet is flat, or it's round, or it's this, and it's that, and we got to do this. No, the only thing we have to do is do everything we do with love's co-creation. That's it. And when we do that, that's when we are most creative. That's when we think outside the box. That's when we think of the others. That's when we're empathetic. We have to live with empathy in our heart. Like Lola said, we have to live from our gut. Anthony, when people have life after death experience, everyone is seeing the light. Or we light beings, also, they have the greatest feeling of love ever. Right. Because when they die and they're having the death experience, they leave their body, right? They're in their soul complete, right? So soul is in total connection with love's co-creation. That's what your soul is. That's why our soul, our free will soul, is so different from anything else, from all of the other dimensional characters, like Lucifer. It's because they don't have one of those. They can only think about themselves. They can only think about the hierarchy. So the light they're seeing there's two types of light: photonic light, incandescent light. So if they see light and they see a shadow, that's the Luciferian light. Try to getting them into the karmic wearing blender of the roulette wheel of fate, right? Fate, not faith, fate. Where the other light, where you don't see any shadows, is where everything lights up completely. You see the truth about everything, right? Yourself, everything around you, and you get to choose with a free will to go where you want to go. Whereas in reincarnation, then you get drawn to the light of the shadow. You get, like I said, thrown into the wearing blender of karma, and you have to be dealt onto the roulette wheel of fate, and you get popped out as something else, and then you have to go through that crap, and then so when you die, you should slow down and feel that love, and go to the light where there are no shadows. See how there's shadows right here? It's bright on this side, dark on that side. That's a shadow, right? So if you were in the photonic light, everything would be illuminated the same, right? So you go towards that light, right? Towards love. You go towards love, right? So I've died 6 times. I've had the conscious, um, you know, experience of the after death experience where you go through the judgment of your own life, that kind of stuff. So I've done it 6 times. So I'm cleaning up my karma. I'm still a pudding head. I still make mistakes, but I try to learn from them, not do them over and over. The more you do that, the more you're in a place like the canary in the coal mine, where it's wanting. I only want my family. I want to be rich. I want to be famous. I want to be a movie star. I want to have cool hair. I want to, it'll all be perfect. Sorry, and if you, screw things up and have a miserable day, I want to kill myself. And then you realize you're not going to because you're so egocentric that you can only think about yourself. So you're not going to kill yourself. The only people who truly kill themselves are folks who are in real pain, right? If it's just coming out of your ego, that's not real pain. So people who are like being tortured, people who are, you know, have a very painful disease, yeah, they want to off themselves. They don't want to go through this. And so those are the only people who truly, eat the gun. A puppy push wanna. Why you block Kumar? He mean you no harm. Do 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 do. Boo 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 boo. Boo boo boo. Uh, 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 uh. Yep, fate. No, fate and destiny, pretty much, Jane. I think are the same thing. There's a difference between faith and fate and destiny, right? So, fate and destiny are like the two-edged sword, right? It's kind of the same thing. But faith, faith is when you feel and you think with your heart and you feel with your gut, right? Not with your head. Your head is just, you know, a Rolodex in a metal box. So, so, mm. The trolls were out today. They got pretty good names though. Gupta, Push, Push, Mommy. Anyway, so so your feelings on faith, fate, and destiny, Jane. Oh, let's see. It's 1 o'clock, and there's four of us here, and we've been talking now for an hour and 13 minutes, and I have some errands to run. So let's talk for you guys spark up an interesting conversation. Well, then we'll continue. Otherwise, I'll try and do again one at night. I don't know for some reason at night the uh, the waves don't want to work. Morning time about now, yes. But anyway, so is a positive outcome versus unlucky fate. Faith is knowing it's all good, right? Or it's like, yeah, I think that's it. Faith is knowing it's all good, right? Yes, and and destiny is still outside of your hands, whereas your life is actually in your hands. If you move forward in a way that you serve something greater than yourself, you're making that choice. We were given our free will by love's co-creation to choose to love. You know, not have to. Within the hegemony of the Luciferian universe, um, and that's and in the beginning everything was dark, right? Well, that was a Luciferian universe, right? That was a hegemony where everybody had to go by what the book said, right? And then, and God was not around, was kind of off somewhere else when that was love's co-creation, right? And at a certain point, love's co-creation got a little bored with that and said, okay, I'm going to create something that I can co-create with that has a free will, that can choose what it's going to do, right? Not just be stuck to the rules, to the law, to the book. So love did that. And once that happened, love was like, wow, this is cool. I'm going to do this. And it started popping up new things in the universe. And, you know, Lucifer was pissed off because up until then, Lucifer was the top dog and he was perfect. And so he got so pissed off, like a petuous little child, he had a tantrum. That was the Big Bang. So he is the illuminated one. Incandescent, he's always talked about his incandescent illumination. And that's light that has shadows. Where love's co creation is photonic light. That's what creates, right? The incandescent light is what manifests illusion. So that's where we're at. We're at this. So if you have destiny is still in the hands of Lucifer, right? Whereas faith is in your hands, co-creating with love. So that's the best I can do on that one. Any other comments, gang? There's 4 of you there. Come on, guys. We should have more people on these chats. I look at these. Yes. In May I'll be doing this 2 years, and there's the people like you know dark journalism, um, Jimmy Dore. And Jimmy Dore, he was on the Young Turks, so he had cable to, him to dive off into. And now he's on RT, which is interesting. And RT is Russian television. It's paid by the Russian government. That's why there are no commercials there. But what's interesting is that their news is probably the most non-prejudicial um, in all of media land in America. Now, you can taste the Russian propaganda, but very little. Not whereas you watch CNN, Fox, MSNBC, NBC, CBS, ABC, any of those, the corporate propaganda is like, almost overpowering. So it's because we're at a place where things are so right in your face. Why doesn't Bernie say, listen, the media is owned by the corporations. Look what they're trying to do to me. I mean, they're really stepping on Bernie. The basic, if the basic population was allowed to pick one person, they'd probably pick Bernie because, the basic folk are tired of everything. And so they want, that's why they picked the only thing that was even close to something different than Hillary was the carrot head. And so that's why the only person that Carrot Pinhead could win against was Hillary because she was the most hated, obviously deplorable, disgusting, putrefying character. She could barely stand up. And her little hard drive would, when she would cackle and laugh uncontrollably. I mean, that was like almost scary. So the carrot pinhead is that last what was called a news conference. Nobody was able to ask him a question. He just ranted for an hour and 40 minutes about, you watch him at his. What's very interesting if you watch the carrot pinhead at his rallies, and you put them on this screen, and then you watch Adolf Hitler in Nuremberg, right? And you voice over so that German, I mean, though you'd really have to listen to it in German and watch the translation reading, but most people can't read these days. So if you were to put, them both in English, and they are so similar, it's like he studied because Adolf's speeches made no sense, like the Carrot Pinhead's speeches do at his last, 10, um, you know, chants or raves or whatever you call those things that he does as re-election campaign rallies. But they're just like the, Adolf Hitler's Nuremberg rallies. Now, not to say that he's spouting off the same stuff, but the way he's saying it, the neurolinguistics of it, right? The neurolinguistic programming. And they use the same tricks. They used to tell the folks, okay, we're going to have a Nuremberg rally and everyone come to the rally. And they built this amazing place that, Lenny Wiltonsold, the filmmaker, made this set for these things so she can make her movies of propaganda. And they would say, okay, come on. And so they get a crowd of, Downey gets maybe 1,500, 2,000, 3,000 if he's lucky. Well, in Nuremberg rallies, they had hundreds of thousands of people. I mean, way more than even showed up at his, his swearing in thing. The biggest crowd ever. No, sorry, Donnie, not really. And we should have known right off the bat when he stuck on that for like 3 years. He still does. I mean, I had the biggest. But in the Nuremberg rallies, they had 100,000 people at these things. And so they said, okay, the Fuhrer's going to be there at 11 a.m. So show up. Some people would get online, at 6 in the morning and get in there around 10. And they had no seats. They stood up, right? And it was like surrounded by concrete, and the sun would rise, and then we'd get baked, right? And over the PA, they had this low frequency hum in a carrier of a high squeaky thing that you could barely hear, but it made you feel like you were surrounded by fingernails on blackboards. And they would play it, so Adolf wouldn't walk out on stage until the sun was setting behind him, and they had these big columns that had these big red things with a swastika on it, and he would walk out. This little guy would walk out onto this gigantic stage where these big pillars and the red things were there, and the sun was coming from behind him. So he would step out from one of these things, and his shadow would be projected across the crowd. He's just up there and saying, little guy, but the shadow was overpowering over everyone. And as soon as he stepped out, they would hit the switch and kill the fingernails on the blackboard that everyone was in that little, place that was being barbecued. And they would have orgasm. Because that thing that was in their head that they couldn't really hear, but it was making them feel like for like 8 hours, they just hit a switch and it went off, and they went, and Adolf would be there and start going on, and they would basically have sexual release. Girls would squirt, guys would come. So that's and that's kind of what they're trying to do at the Carrot Pinhead rallies. And so, let's see. Jane says, I saw it. Destiny is a positive outcome. Let's see. Do you really believe that that politics work for me? Puppet show. Yes, it's a puppet show. And what do I keep saying? I don't believe in anything. No, politics don't work. But what politics are, not just it's a puppet show, yes, but it is a theatrical event that when you look at it, it represents the body politic, meaning everybody who you're rubbing up against, what they believe. You can observe what the human race is doing by the political show, right? And then you can work, and all of that is just a puppet show slash whining, and by seeing that, you can then create an alternative aesthetic. And that's what we have to do based on service to love's co creation, not service to yourself, not service to mass consumption, not service to any political motif. From experiencing. Let's see. Yes. So the first time I died was when I was born. Second time when I died was when I was 10. And between birth and 10, especially between 7 and 10, when I was at my parents' house, I was sick all the time. So, uh, it almost felt like death. And I lived in a house of feral wolves. It wasn't like the unconditional loving home of my grandmother and the community of Harlem and her friends, right? It was more the Long Island suburban doggy eat dog, right? So that was from 7 to 10. That was like living death, right? And then at 10, I said, screw this, because I ended up in a Catholic hospital. First of all, you know, for most of my life, I've been beaten and throttled and choked physically by the Catholic Church. First grade, got beat up, arm, broken jaw, broken fingers by a nun, right? Landed up in a hospital. And then I ended up being, tutored by, I went off and lived in a Maryknoll priests. I don't know, it was like a think tank, So these guys were scholars, they didn't wear the collar. They wore like, it was in the 60s. So they were like hip dudes. They wore turtlenecks and corduroy and comfy shoes, sand shoes. And anyway, and they were all scholars in their own disciplines: psychology, sociology, anthropology, physics, advanced math, astronomy. It was like, studying under Plato, right? I did that for about a year. And then I came back, went to kindergarten, and I would go visit those guys every so often. And then my parents moved to a place called Old Brookville, which was near, there was the school system there was the North Shore school system, and it was very progressive, and I hate the word now, but then it was a good word. And they had an old time, like almost schoolhouse school system, right? Then they got their demographics changed, so they had to build new schools. So they said, since we're gonna go from the little red house to a real, big school system, why don't we do it right? So they actually thought about it, and they kept their grammar schools as the biggest part of the little red schoolhouse system as grammar schools, and kept that as clear as possible. And then they had a really interesting middle school, which was like the Harvard experiment. And then they had high school, which was like college. You got out about high school, it's like you had a college degree. And they had music and theater and art and crafts and aerospace and you name it, they had it, where you did it with your hands. And I luckily went in there just when they did it, when it was the height of when they were really amazing. So my grammar school was an amazing experience, and my middle school was an amazing experience. I had great teachers, really sharpened me up. And then my mom set me off to be a priest. So I was ready to be the dude in high school. My brother was like Hugh Hefner. He was Hugh Hefner. I was going to be the dude. And all the girls and all the people, all the teachers, because my brother had like made the mold of our male familia. And they had heard about me in grammar school and middle school. So I was going to be the dude. My bro was like, he was like Frank Sinatra, and I was going to be like Alistair, uh, you know, I'm going to say Alistair Crowley, but no. more like Huxley, right? And so anyway, and I had a lot of female friends, and in seventh and eighth grade, they used me as a to see what intimacy was about, right? Because I was their buddy, and they already fooled around with their girlfriends, so I was the next thing to fool around on before they got somebody they might want to have be a boyfriend. So anyway, seventh and eighth grade was amazing for me. I really had a great time, and I had some really great teachers. I had a great math teacher who really, he's a guy who taught me how to do trigonometry and algebra in my head. It's really simple. You just got to step back and look at it. He goes, the only real math is geometry, right? So that's how you really can tell what truth is about. But algebra and trigonometry are just businessman's math to get a generalistic point of view of something that you can prove that you're right. Right. So he was the guy who really, when I went into statistic analysis and demographics, I learned all of that in seventh and eighth grade because there were three of us in that math class of his. I mean, they had math for the general public, but there were three of us who were, being sharpened up. And one was Kim Ramona, even though she was like unbelievably gorgeous. Like I said, she was dating the high school football coach in seventh grade. I mean, she was fully developed, but she was a genius, right? And that's why she loved me. I was like, I was like Forrest Gump, and she was like Jenny, but without the father who raped and beat her. She had a really nice family. Not rich, but nice. The guy was what did her father do? I know her mother was a nurse, but what did her father do? I forget. Milkman or it was something in food services somewhere. But they had a nice little house, right, more in the rural part rather, but right on the edge of the suburbs, right near. She could almost walk to school, and she took the bus because she got on my bus because it went backwards. So it went all the way out and then delivered the kids, and she was the last one off the bus. So we would have a lot of time on the bus together, right? And she would either get off at my stop, and she could actually, if she cut through the woods, she could get to her house with no problems. And I would walk her home and then walk back. And that's how I learned how not to be, how I learned how to really walk through the forest, right? Because she would come to my house, and because we had a pool, we'd go to the Anderson estate, ride horses and bike ride, and anyway, so she was with me once when I kind of died, right? And didn't die like I did the other times, but I had a immune response, where I needed an EpiPen, but didn't have EpiPens. And so she was smart enough to pick me up, and she was not as, well, I was still a pea, still small, but she picked me up and walked me back to the chauffeur's domicile for Mr. Anderson, who was in the SAS. He was a merc, and he was a medical guy, and so he saved my life. But I didn't see the light. I'm still like talking, but I didn't feel that good. But she saved my life. I got bit by something, and I went into an allergic reaction. So that was the point where my mom said, "Okay, enough of this," and she found a really, really good, um, guy with allergies, and what was his name? Oh, Dr. Young. And she took me there, and he says, "Okay, your son, he needs to stay with us a week or two or three, because it's not just we do one test and then give him a shot. This guy, we're gonna have to like dig deep." And so they did things way outside the box. So first week, he I got my back. He just covered me in pinpricks of things I'd be allergic to, and see how they, you know, it got exposed. And he had a salt water swimming pool, and he would like do that, and I would have a reaction, and then he'd let me go swim in the saltwater swimming pool. That would help relax the allergic reactions. And he would mix up his own little jungle juice of stuff to get, and put me on to get me over my things. And the other thing he did, his wife was a animal breeder, horse and dogs. Show horses and golden retrievers, right? And so they had me sleep in the barn with the animals, so I would be exposed to all the molds and cruds and crabs. And that's why I really, really, really got to realize that animals were part of my family, all my relations. Because I really, got to really relate to horses and really relate to dogs because both, horse, weighs a ton and a half and, it's taller than you are and can crush you if it just like turns around in the wrong way and you're in a stall, you know. Um, so I learned how to always be present with an animal, right? Same with dogs. Dogs got this big, it's a wolf, even a little chihuahua will tear you up. And so you have to always be present with animals and you always have to be connected to them. And you always have to, be the alpha dog, but not the bully. The alpha dog, because all these animals, they don't want to, even have to worry about it. They just want you to be their friend and take care of them, right? So if they feel that's you, they'll go, So where I'm at, my friend, he's got, you know, pit bull, bulldog masters, really nasty dogs. When anyone they don't know comes even close to the property or the car, if we're out in the car, they go nuts. And if the window's open, they would jump out and chew the person, right? But and the people here who have these animals, they let the dogs boss them around. Me, I don't like scream at them. And end up screaming at them and putting collars that shock them. And me, no. All I have to do is this. They sit down. I do this. They lie down. I do this. They go to sleep. That's it, right? And they beg for food all the time from everybody else, but not me. I will give them something, but only after they've like been asleep, been relaxed. I finished my meal. I'm washing the dishes. I will give them a little something. But so that's how you have to deal with animals, right? Be there for them. Always be present with them. Don't take them for granted. Don't hurt them. Don't be mean to them. And that's how you have to be with human beings. They're all our relations. So when I was at, the doctor's house, I spent 3 weeks with all these animals, and I was cured of all my allergies. Right. The only thing that I'm still a little sensitive to is dust and mold, because the first thing my parents did when they brought me home from the hospital was put me in the outside porch in a dresser drawer that was moldy. Right. So homeopathy. Yep, that was what he was doing. Homeopathy. So, and each time I died, basically, up until I was 16. When I died, when I was 16, which was about the fourth time or third time I died, I got out of my body. Meaning the other times, I wasn't even thinking about being out of my body. I saw things and experienced things that, now that I understand what it was, I was outside my body. But when I was, up until I was, 16, I didn't have that reference. When I died in the hospital at 10, I, you know, you know, it was more like a TV show than I realized that I was outside of my body. Anyway, at 16 I was, and it didn't hurt. I smoked a joint, and and I never smoked pot. I was around a lot of people. I got a lot of contact buzzes. I worked in rock and roll, but I never did. I was a person who didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't do anything because I didn't feel like I had to or wanted to, or and I was self-aware enough to say, well, because I watched people drink and be really stupid. The one time I did drink when I was um, 14, I was really stupid. I fell into a dumpster and fell asleep. Woke up when the Chinese guy threw a can of clippings on my head. Anyway, uh, so from 16 on, the other 3 or 4 times I died, I went outside my body and I went above when I saw my body on the ground or on a bed or in a hospital. And I, had that perspective, right? I didn't see any light. I mean, there was a light around. Actually, things were darkish, right? And the only real light was when I saw my life's progression on the carousel of preview, right, of what you did, right, and that's the only light I saw. It was a beam on all the different moments that I was looking at, right? So I could see, and it was photonic light. There were no shadows. It was the truth. It was exactly what happened. Not what I thought happened, not what I think happened, not what I made, excuses for, but what really happened, right? So, um, but each time I saw that, it wasn't me under the spotlight. It was me like over in a mezzanine in the shadow, and my spiritual guides where I never saw them face up. I only they felt their presence behind me. They always had my back, and they were talking to me. So I would say, "Well, look at that." Like last time I died, right? And I came back, and what I came back to was this common room that I worked in a hospital with all these old folks who had dementia and senility. And they always had a party. They always had balloons. They always had hats. They always had cake. And so when I died in the plate of spaghetti, I wasn't even looking at myself in the plate of spaghetti or in the hospital or any of the other places that my body was going to. I was up in this commons room, right? And it was very well lit, like again, photonic light, no shadows. And all the old people I worked for, right? And some other old people I knew were in this common room with party hats on and balloons and cake. And I was like, oh, thank God it's over. I can go home and just, hang with love, co-creation, and go to Shambhala, hang forth with all my favorite mentors. And the voice said, "Oh no, you're not done yet." I said, "What do you mean? What about all the balloons and party hats and everything and cake? Can I cut?" You asked you, "Can I have a piece of cake?" I'm eating the cake, and I got it all around my mouth. It's all in my beard. And they go, "No, you chose to come here. You said you were going to fulfill," and that's kind of what destiny is. Destiny is your choice of something before you're born. That's destiny. Now, it doesn't mean that that's going to happen. It's just something you choose to do. Whether you do it well, do it poorly, that is more like fate, right? Because other things get in the way of your destiny, right? Now, that's very good. I got it, right? And faith is what's here and in your gut, right? And that's why you made that decision to come here and fulfill this outcome, right? Good thoughts, good words, good actions, good deeds, good outcomes, right? So, anyway, so there I was with cake all over my face and the balloons and everyone blowing horns, and they said no. They said, well, you can, you can stay here in this common room with these folks, but that's where you're going to stay, If you want to ascend, you haven't ascended, you're doing a good job. You're really doing a good job. But you're not over. You're not done. Why do you think you've died so many and come back? Because you're not done. You're a lucky bastard. You're not done. You can choose. You can stay here. You can eat more cake, have more balloons, more party favors. But that's all you're getting. Then you're going to go back into the wearing blender of fate and be shot out someplace, right? And it'll be fate rather than destiny. And I said, okay, I'll go back. And bango, I came back and I was in a gurney being rolled into an operating room. And I said, wait, what's going on here? And I said, oh, you're awake. Yes, I said, I'm awake. Well, you shouldn't be. We've given you a bunch of morphine. You should be knocked out before we put the mask on you. I said, no, I'm awake. What's going on? And they said, oh, we're about to roll you in to give you, bitropical coronary bypass, and you've got all these thrombosis, and we got to take this out and change all your plumbing, and by the way, we're going to cut your legs off. I said, whoa. said, well, they're about to turn gangrene. I said, are they gangrene? No. And they're about to. We can deal with this. I said, roll me back into the ICU. And see that guy over there? He's like Perry Mason. I know I didn't. Well, he signed it. Well, he can't sign anything for me. I gave him no permission. He's just doing that because he wants me to finish what I was doing for him. And he thinks you've told him that you do all this shit, I'll be ready to work for him in 2 weeks. No, I'll be dead. So no, roll me back into the ICU. Did that. And, it took me 6 years to get to where I am now, lost 200 pounds, you know. I have all the stuff that I had that were going to kill me, but I made my body better. And that's, a lesson I learned. That was a good thing. Those 10 years of hedonism, hey, I had a great time. I did a lot of good things. Yes, I wasted 10, not waste, no. But it's not quite wasting 10 years. I had to do that to get the perspective of what that was. And it was only 10 years rather than a whole lifetime of doing that, right? And like I said, I enjoyed every slice of that chocolate cake and all those other fun things that the desperate lawyers were addicted to, all those titty bars and all. But I never went over the limit. I never got on, what's his name's airplane and went to, the secret island. Never, no, never took advantage of anybody. Never got over. The closest I came to that was to make really, really rich people um, look at what they had done and made them miserable for a period of time that they couldn't stand being in that room, so they would sign the contract. And that was my basic operating position. The judge gave the ombudsman the authority to negotiate with this group of people. That guy gave me the authority to stick them in a room and lock them there and keep them there and keep showing them who they were until they got so crazed and miserable that they would sign the contract just to get out of the room. And I had a 100%, I never was not able to get the people to sign the contract. And, so those were really rich people. I never did that kind of, torture to, you know, innocent people. So, and this wasn't torture, come on, just showed them who they were, you know, shrinks get paid a lot of money to do that. And was told to get an amputation, skin, said no, and wanted to harm him, and finally got second opinion and saved the leg. Yep, exactly. There's, forget second opinion, third, fourth, fifth, however many it takes. Like, so I have diabetes, and they put me on this one drug, and it was killing me. I mean, it was making me feel terrible. And I went to my doctor at the time, and I said, "Hey, listen, I need a different drug. I, subscribe that. That's what you should be on. Take it religiously." And I said, "Well, I went online and I read all these. I'm having all the things you're not supposed to have. If you get it, you're supposed to stop. See, it's just, talk to your doctor and so I'm your doctor. I know better." I said, "Screw you. I'm finding another doctor." It took me 3 more doctors till I found one who read the stuff I found online and said, "Okay, let's try a different drug." And we tried 3 or 4 until I found the one that actually kind of works for me without any of the side effects. So, and that's medicine, the Thusian little hominin is doctor heal thyself. We're all our own doctors. We're here on this little extravaganza trip to heal ourselves. So that's what it's about. It's almost 2 hours. It's about 1:39. So I'm going to say, unless you guys got more to say, I'm going to. So I want you to think about what we can do to change all this. First, as a cadre, and then individual little pebbles in the pond, right? So all of you who are watching this, so there's 4 of you watching it, maybe 9 have watched it over the whole show. Now there's going to be another 1,000 on the average who go back and watch this show, right? So there's like, 50, 60, 100,000 people watching this, but only 370, subscribers, and there's only like, between 4 and 12 people who go on the chat. So, and the chat is what makes the show. I could just, like when I was limited by my bandwidth and I could only, film something on my phone and then, play it for you guys, load it up on the thing that took 2 hours for a 5-minute little diatribe. That's just me talking. But and I did my best at doing some weird ass post production there to make it entertaining. But this show is the live chat. You guys talking, right? So I do the stream of consciousness thing, and you guys respond, and that's what makes the show Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. So okay, there it is. It's 1 hour, 15 minutes, and at 50 seconds, I'm gonna say goodnight, Gracie. Right? 35, 36. I love you guys. Remember to breathe. 20% in, 30% out. Maybe tonight we'll do a guided meditation, right? So think about what you want to be guided through. So come to the show tonight with thoughts about what we need to do to change the world as a cadre, how to be our best self as a little pebble in the pond, and what you want to have the guided meditation to be about. So there we are, 50 seconds. Okay. There's a button. There we go.